In my last video, I explored how we can relate to people that we disagree with, the process of opening dialogue with people that we disagree with. It was an exploration in healing the divisions between people and between countries. The dialogue, after the talk, when I delivered it to my Sangha, raised several important questions. What practices can we engage with to encourage and cultivate this kind of dialogue? Awakening itself is no guarantee that we will dialogue in this way. Remember the Zen chant, to encounter the absolute is not yet enlightenment. So even when we see our true nature, this open-hearted interaction with the world and others needs to be evoked and cultivated, encouraged. So knowing our true nature, and that this is the true nature of everyone, profoundly shifts how we see ourselves and how we see each other. Once we know our true nature, how then can we cultivate a dialogue that promotes peace and kindness rather than conflict? From my experience, there are two key aspects to this, and each has practices that can be used to help encourage and cultivate it. The two keys are, first, knowing our true nature, our true autonomy, and connecting heart to heart. Let's take the first key, knowing our true autonomy. Encouraging and directly seeing non-separation or oneness is only the beginning. And in some cases, it can actually make us feel alone in the world. We might pull back from interacting with others. Of course, this isn't true for everyone, but it does happen. And over time, as we engage with other people, we begin to see that they are true nature and at the same time are human incarnations. They're not isolated pieces. I hope you really get that we're simultaneously the one, or non-separate, and a manifestation, an individual piece, an individual manifestation of that. With the truth of ultimate dimension, when the truth of the ultimate dimension is known, the possibilities for peaceful dialogue and action in the world increase immensely, as does our responsibility. When true nature awakens in the human world, actions in the world come out of a sense of unlimited wholeness. There's nothing left out. This is what some spiritual teachers call true autonomy. So rather than antagonistic and self-centered dialogue, we shift to a dialogue that is about the whole, about everyone, about everything. The collective becomes paramount, not the little me. It's not about how can I benefit, it becomes about how can we both benefit the whole, the world. We also see the paradox that we are simultaneously all one, and that each of us are unique and valuable individuals. This is the seeing of true autonomy. This true autonomy has an infinite capacity to express itself through its humanity and become a liberating presence in the world. We have no agency, no autonomy, no choice when we are believing the dream state, or put another way, when we are identified with the ego. We can only live out our conditioning, and therefore we have no freedom or autonomy. Think of it as a script that we unconsciously follow, limiting our ability to make choices that truly align with our authentic selves. Dialogue and actions in this case are guided by ingrained patterns rather than conscious choices. Have you seen this in your life? Even in this moment, you can see this. If you are believing the egoic dream, then you have no real choice as to how you will respond to my words. All your reactions are pre-programmed based on your conditioning. No authentic choices are possible. This will also be true when you interact with someone that you disagree with. Consider a moment in your life when you found yourself reacting impulsively or predictably to a situation or a person. This could be a response to a comment or any circumstance, actually. I invite you to reflect on these instances, emphasizing that during these moments, you're likely reacting in a predictable and habitual way. Your reactions are not true expressions of your agency or autonomy, but rather pre-programmed habitual responses dictated by your conditioning. This lack of agency becomes especially apparent when we're engaging with conflicting viewpoints, with people we disagree with. When faced with someone you disagree with, if you are still identified with the ego and believing that this is who you essentially are, then your responses are likely to be automatic and devoid of any genuine choice. The recognition of this pattern prompts a pivotal question to arise. Have you observed this in your life? Can you identify instances where your reactions seemed almost involuntary, driven by ingrained beliefs and habitual patterns? Remember that when we transcend the ego, or the identification with the egoic existence falls away, we are not dismantling or turning away from our individuality. Our uniqueness as human beings still remains, although it is now known as a conditioned appearance and not who we ultimately are. This conditioned appearance has value and purpose. And when we navigate the world, interact with people, other people, knowing this, that this is just an appearance, can shift how we relate. Feel cold. Please let me repeat that. Our conditioned appearance as an individual has importance and purpose. We are not abandoning our individuality or uniqueness. Transcending the ego does not imply erasing the individual, but rather recognizing it as a conditioned appearance. In this state, our uniqueness is not discarded, but seen as a valuable and purposeful aspect of our existence. By understanding that our conditioned responses are just appearances and not the ultimate truth of who we are, we gain the ability to shift, to now navigate the world with a new sense of freedom. And this recognition becomes a catalyst for more authentic, intentional, peaceful interactions, even in the face of disagreement. From this perspective, can you see how you might behold the true nature of somebody else? Somebody you might intensely disagree with or even dislike? It might be a political figure, a relative. It might be Brussels sprouts. Now, it doesn't mean that you suddenly agree with the person or that you like the taste of Brussels sprouts. You can still disagree, but it's different to disagree and just see the egoic version of their wrongness. You realize that your disagreement or dislike is an appearance and not ultimately true. And when I say not ultimately true, this does not mean not important or not worth engaging with. It feels very true to the other person. We can disagree and see both that it is only a relative truth and that it is also an expression of true nature. This is profound. This kind of awareness allows us to approach interactions with a greater degree of authenticity, of freedom. We can engage with differing opinions without being bound by automatic, ego-driven reactions. It's a kind of impersonal engagement. It's no longer about me. We start to realize that our own lives are not about us. Our lives are about everyone else. The reason for doing anything becomes about the whole and not a personal thing. Not because you want something or you want to do good or you want to be seen as a good person. It is instead a natural unfolding, benefiting the collective whole. To do this, we need some way to anchor ourselves in being rather than in the confusion of the mind. We can easily get lost in the mind if we don't have an anchor that is simple, that's solid. The anchors are very beingness, or our willingness and ability to abide in that beingness, that place that's untouched by the mind. We can abide in the still, aware presence that is always and already there, the background of stillness that's behind all the noise. From that place, we can go into the confusion of the world. When we abide in this, there's an intuitive and clear intention to act. It is clear because it's not directed by self-centered, self-referential, egoic thought, but rather from wholeness. And this shift in perspective paves the way for more conscious living, fostering a greater capacity for open-hearted interactions and dialogue with others. It's spontaneous and doesn't come from forethought, and it takes a tremendous amount of trust, of faith, just to rest in the unknown so that the known, the truth, can speak itself. So concretely, how can we do this? How can we make decisions and take the mind into the beingness and find answers? This is challenging because as you venture into the mind, there's a tendency to get lost in the mind. The practice that I found most helpful is what I call heart-to-heart, or resting and acting from the true heart. And I found a few practices that helped cultivate or evoke this. I move attention from the head to the body and rest in uncertainty or not knowing, and allow interactions to come from the true heart, come from the heart rather than the head, or at least have the head led by the heart. You go inside with the question and let it sit and bring a curiosity. Just bring this curiosity that from the stillness, and wisdom naturally arises. I have a YouTube video entitled Thinking from Collective Consciousness that provides much more detail on this. The challenge is to just rest, trust, and stay curious. We can engage with people in the same way that we engage with contemplation or inquiry in our practice, just posing questions and holding them in awareness. At some point, we realize what this is all about. We know that our life is no longer ours. We realize that this is about it's not about me or what I want. So the action of true autonomy grows out of the true heart. Right? There's no sense of self-consciousness or caring what people think. Do you get the sense that Jesus cared what people thought of him when he moved about the world? By letting the mind rest, our other capabilities are allowed to come online, which allows heart-centered actions to take a centered stage, which allows dialogue rather than conflict to arise. It is like the head dropping into the heart, as I said. When I look at the suffering in the world, I feel that we as humanity really need to drop from our heads into our hearts, to feel into the true heart. To do this, begin by dropping your attention just from the head area to the area of the body. This quiet presence of the true heart. Notice if the ego begins to grasp for something or desire for something to happen. Instead, simply come back, offering your attention to the true heart. This is the most precious gift that you can really offer the world. It's like a humble offering of love rather than trying to achieve something. When we